We're here today to talk about acronyms and short forms. So, for example, PWD. Is that the Public Works Department? Is it, maybe it's a computer language? Or maybe it is a living, breathing, feeling person with disabilities. What do you think? Well, we're here today to help you decide. So, two words that we often use interchangeably are impairment and disability, but they are different. And according to the Disability Language Guidelines that were put out by the United Nations, the definitions are, and I'm going to read this so that I get them the way they wrote them. Impairment: problems in body function or body structure, such as a significant deviation or loss. Body functions are the physiological functions of body systems, including psychological functions, and body structures are anatomical parts of the body, such as organs and limbs. And for disability, the definition is: persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments which, in interaction with various barriers, may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So, the disability or disabilities are a result of the impairment, and they're experienced differently from person to person. So, for example, two people can have osteoarthritis, and they can have different joints that are affected, or they can have a different range of motion within the same joint. So their experience is unique there. One may have trouble walking, while the other one has trouble grasping items and manipulating with their hands. Right? Similarly, Alzheimer's, which is a dementia, has stages or levels, but as the disease progresses, they come in, some stay, some go, others come in, and not in order. It would just be too easy if it came in order. I remember with my dad, and so you can have 1 and 6 and 2 and 4, and then you can have 1, 2 and 5, and things happen, and then some of them come back after a bit. And Alzheimer's shares some of its symptoms, but not all of them, with approximately 100 other diseases that may cause dementia, including vascular dementia and dementia with Lewy body. And those 100 also cross over with each other with having similar or the same symptoms in some cases, but not all, again. So everyone's journey through dementia is unique. There are even some impairments that cause absolutely no disabilities whatsoever. So there's a lot to think about there in how we describe and how we talk about a disability and the cause of the disability or the impairment. Using the acronym of PWD for persons with disabilities just isn't appropriate. At least in written form, as much as is possible, the focus should be on the person, and written out as person or people with disabilities. And that's because you want to avoid getting into the mindset or presenting the fact that this is just like everybody and we're all exactly the same in this group and we're just reduced to PWD. Disabilities come in many varieties, as do the diseases. And I think that we owe it to the issues that people with these diseases face to at least include the name of the disease more times than the short form. For example, cystic fibrosis instead of CF, multiple sclerosis versus MS, autism spectrum disorder instead of ASD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder versus ADHD. And there's many, many others. One of the reasons for this, and I was looking this up today to sort of see where the work has come along. I do this every so often. It's just something that I do. So, for example, for the Canadian Cystic Fibrosis Society in 2020, their annual data report. Okay, so 4,332 people are living with cystic fibrosis in Canada. There were 87 new diagnoses, and 64 of those were identified through newborn screenings. Okay, 62% of people with cystic fibrosis were adults. That's a big number. Okay, and it makes a difference. Now, the average age of survival in 2020 was 55.4 years, which is really good when you think that only 20 years ago the survival rate was to 35.5 years. So things are working. It's a positive. And when you're talking about fundraising and being encouraging of getting something done, this is the kind of thing when you say cystic fibrosis, you don't gloss over what the disease is, what the symptoms are, what people have to live with, and how it affects people who are very young. Okay. Then you have here as well with cystic fibrosis, people attended the clinics, over 18,000 in-person or virtual clinic visits, and spent over 17,100 days in the hospital, which is a decrease over previous years. A lot of that could be due to COVID, because the hospitals were filled up with it. Okay. 34% of adults have CF-related diabetes, and in Canada, 21 people received a lung transplant. That's one of the ways to prolong your life. And if you look at multiple sclerosis, in Canada, there are over 90,000 people living with multiple sclerosis. So that's 1 in every 400 people. And 4,377 people are diagnosed with MS each year, which works out to about 12 people a day. On average, you get to have this diagnosis when you start to notice what's going on and you go in and you start seeing a doctor and they go through the whole process. That's at about 43 years old. You start getting into that kind of thing. It is predominantly a disease for women, 75%. And 90% of people diagnosed with multiple sclerosis are initially diagnosed with relapsing, remitting forms of MS, while 10% are diagnosed with progressive. So these terms, these names, keeping them in use and in the public eye and just at the forefront is important. Letters don't make the same impression. And to take that a little bit further, I read an article last week in themighty.com on social media, okay? And it's about a common word that I think almost everybody has used. I know I have. And that is spaz, or spazzing, or spastic. And you use it to describe people or things that are like awkward or like way too excited. I had a cat that was like just beyond when when the Temptation Streets came on. I was beyond excited, and I did use a spaz. Okay. The problem with the word, and it's a short form, okay, is that medical professionals describe high muscle tone stiffness as spasticity. Okay. Now, spasticity is readily present in cerebral palsy. And I don't think it's too hard to see how our use of the word could be considered discriminatory. So again, it's thinking about the words, not short forming them, not losing their meaning. So we like it simple. And yes, there is an acronym for that. That is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Acronyms and short forms are easy to remember, but not necessarily for what they represent. This video is going live on January the 2nd, 2024. During the Christmas season, I happened to see this post on social media, and the comments were that people found it funny. Now, it's doubtful that it was intentionally discriminatory to people with disabilities, but I couldn't help but see the similarities and references to Mary Did You Know, which is a Christmas song that I quite like. That post made me feel awful and invisible and disrespected. But I doubt that the people who found it funny gave what it actually said any thought at all. They probably didn't consider what someone who couldn't walk or couldn't speak would give to have those abilities restored. The words we choose have meaning. They have weight. Letters, acronyms, short forms lessen that. They make it less clear, fuzzier, more kind. When words are used with care and consideration, they can be powerful. Persons with disabilities, we need to have our words heard fully, loud and clear. There are many acronyms and short forms within the disability accessibility community. Lots of them. So one of the main ones that you hear all the time is the AODA, which is used far too much instead of saying the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And I know how long that is. However, I think every so often you've got to say the words so that people know what it is and that we're talking this is for us. This is our act that we have problems with, that isn't happening the way that we would want it to. But the short form doesn't convey all of that. StatCan, which is Statistics Canada, where you can find all of the statistics that have been kept on accessibility across Canada for years, and the studies that have been done on it, and the findings, and including for employment and salaries and men versus women and diseases and all kinds of things are in there, but it's just StatCan. And then we have OHRC, the Ontario Human Rights Commission. People with disabilities have been fighting for human rights for a very long time. Then there is the Ontario Disability Support Program, which is ODSP. And I am as guilty of this as anyone is. And it becomes kind of a sing-songy short form, because you just go, ODSP. Yes, I'm talking about my ODSP. Oh, I have to send something to ODSP. And it doesn't have any meaning to anybody else, because really the letters are getting blurred even further in the way that you say it. And then for one of the best organizations in Canada, okay, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, we've shortened it down to, and use more, the acronym CNIB. And I just think that does not give due diligence, due deference to an organization that has made so much of a difference to so many people. I'm extremely proud that we have them in Canada. Okay, then to move on, I won't trying not to get. There is also EDI, or DIE. You can move it around anyway. And it means the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which are committees that have been created in an awful lot of businesses and stuff to start setting out a way of operating in order to make workplaces better for marginalized groups of people, including people with disabilities, people of color, people in the LGBTQ community, all of those things. That's what EDI does. But EDI is, again, very short, and it doesn't, when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, okay, and equity among men and women, that's been a battle for years. Okay, when you shorten that down to EDI, what does it mean to you? Okay. Then we have one of what I think is the most unassuming and tiny little words that has huge meaning for the disabled community, and not in a good way, and that is MAID. And MAID hides the name Medical Assistance in Dying. It angers me that it exists in its current form. I believe that every single person on the planet deserves to die with dignity. I do not believe that that is what MAID's intent is. Enough on that. We even have a federally mandated, no, Leona, provincially mandated Municipal Accessibility Advisory Committee, which we refer to as the AAC. And they're currently having their involvement in accessibility issues downgraded overall across Ontario. And this is contrary to the recommendations in the third review of the AODA that was conducted in 2020 by David Onling, where it was said that many communities said that they just weren't listened to, like that either the problem wasn't brought to them or their recommendations were just tossed aside and weren't listened to, that it was said that it wasn't an accessibility issue. There were all kinds of things going on there. So you've got this first line of defense for people with disabilities, this committee, which is made up of predominantly people with disabilities, and they're not being listened to, and they're being cut in the influence that they do have. And then if you consider the most recent review of the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, in December of 2023, their lack of involvement is clearly evident. Apparently, Ontario is in a crisis situation. And our Premier is shuffling, shall we say. So, what are your thoughts? First of all, did you enjoy this video? Please let me know. Second, do you think that I went a little bit overboard in what I think about the whole short form thing and acronyms, or do you agree that maybe they have become used too much? Right? Anyway, there are comments. I'd love to hear anything that you have to say, as long as it is respectful. That would be good. All right? And I want to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, if you could give it a like, that would be great. Okay? And please, if you'd like to subscribe, do so. All right? I want to wish everybody Happy New Year. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye-bye.